and I want to welcome you all to the first Lamb Summit in the United States. The next speaker, Dr. Pethick, comes from Australia, obviously. And when I went to the LambX in Albany 2.5 years ago, it was very clear that much of the work on lamb quality, flavor profiles, and otherwise was being generated by the university that he worked at, Murdoch University in West Australia. They seemed to me to be so far ahead of where we were in all of this, and there was a great deal of focus on it, and Dr. Pethick was there, perhaps the best spokesman. So I'm very pleased to welcome you here. And by the way, you can continue to send up questions via the electronic system. It seems to work pretty well. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. That one, right. Yeah, thanks very much, Stan and Mr. Chairman, and also thanks to the US Land Board. It's a hell of a privilege to be over here. Now, I'm a bit of a crazy bastard. I'm an academic. I'm not I've never sold a kilo of lamb in my life. I eat shitloads of it. I like to think I'm a really good homegrown chef and all the rest of it, so I'll try anything. But and I might sort of say anything too, so apologies in advance if I embarrass myself, but particularly some of you with a more tender viewpoint on life. Now, I'll get this friggin' thing working. There we go. So I'm going to talk about a bit about lean meat yield. That was obviously pretty topical here by the sounds of it, based on some of the introductory talks we've had. Also talk about our consumer eating quality results. By the way, I'm not telling you what to do at all. I mean, I love America, I love Australia. I'm just saying this is what we do. Yeah, that's going to be my story. Then I'm going to talk about carcass grading for lean meat yield and eating quality. So we're trying to come up with a carcass grading thing. It'll be a little bit like beef. They actually truly carcass grade. We don't friggin' carcass grade. Of course we don't. You know, that a Europe score, you should have shot that years ago. What we do is embarrassing at the moment. I'll also come up, talk about that. Then I'm going to talk about our little push on intramuscular fat to counter lean meat yield. So lean meat yield's important, but eating quality is important, and that's where we've got to. Then I'll talk a bit about the genetics of eating quality, at least where we've got to. So the background is, I'll skip over this, I mean, friggin' hell, consumers around the world make a deliberate decision to buy lamb over and above price. It's simple as that. I mean, you can be banging on about price, oh, it's too bloody dear. Well, it's just too dear. It is dear. You're not going to change that because there's no lamb in the world and there's enough people who want it. So just get over it. It's hellish and expensive. Like, I don't know, those, like, I love these. What do you guys call them? Lollipops. We call them, that's lamb, mate. It's not lollies, but ends up being, if you just eat the lean out of it, I don't eat friggin' bone anymore, and I think it's 90% of consumers cut the fat off before or after cooking, so they don't eat the fat anymore. So you're paying $35 US per pound. This is what we pay at home for that lean. Now, I think I saw a prime ribeye, boneless, up at this fancy, you've got a fancy, beautiful store up here, what do they call them, food court or something? Hell, it was good. For 20 US a pound. Cheaper, but your best beef. Is that right? Prime's best beef? I can't remember, anyway, whatever. Friggin' dear. So we've all got the idea of that. Baby, go. What is it? There we go. So what we've done, when we get consumers to eat lamb, and we use thousands of consumers to eat lamb, not 5 or 6, and the untrained consumers, they fill out this form, 0 to 100 for tenderness, juiciness, flavour, overall liking, 0 to 100, like a school mark, and then they tick one box to the bottom, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, unsatisfactory, good every day, better than every day, or premium. Now, statistically, we can crunch those numbers, make a score. So the SQ4, the bottom of that slide in black, excuse me, it's 30% tenderness, 10% juicy, 30% flavour, and 30% overall liking. That's our collated score of sheep meat, and it's very similar to beef. And we can relate that score then to whether they give it 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. So that's the grade. So when people actually eat the lamb, and we make sure they're giving a diverse range of lamb, like top sides and loins, tough and tender cuts, we've also asked them what are they willing to pay for the different quality grades. So I've got on the top there fail, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, or if you like, it's fail, pass, credit, distinction. It's a bit like going to university, yeah? Just keep it simple. We've got answers from the US, answers from China, and answers from Australia, all eating the same lamb. Quite a complicated statistical design, I won't go into it, not exactly the same lamb, but in a paired construction. All give the same answer. Let's bring the currency for the pass, just a good old pass lamb, make it one unit of currency per kilo, or whatever it is, per pound. They'll give you twice as much for distinction lamb. So that gave us the strength to say, well, there is, benefit in grading lamb into different quality grades. So this brings us over to our goal is to somehow be able to decide the true value of the carcass and give that information back to farmers and give it forward to retailers, butchers, etc. So, it's pretty simple. The value of the carcass equals the weight of the cuts multiplied by the value of the cuts sold. Now, of course, there's more to it than just MSA 3, 4, 5-star. There is supply and demand. There is provenance. There is loyalty. There's offal. There's wool. But today I'm cheating. I'm saying it's all about the quality of the meat. That's what we focus on today. I'm not talking about offals and other stuff, but I do appreciate, of course, they're important. So let's move on to lean meat yield. It's bloody difficult to measure. It's an incredibly difficult thing to measure. VIA's not too bad, video image analysis. I guess you understood what that meant. You take a picture of the carcass and whatever else. It's very indirect measure. It needs a lot of equations. Those equations have got to be trained, be different from merinos, or what do you think you call them, rhombolays over here? I think rhombolays, anyway, those are sort of long skinny things of wool versus a real nuggety Suffolk or whatever it is, so it's a difficult thing to get VIA to work. It can, it's better than most. Anyway, we've been working on it. So I'm going to work this damn thing over one day. So we've also gone with the UK and Europe and gone for CT, CAT scanners, to be our gold standard for lamb measurement. So CAT scanners are uniform, they're fairly cheap, you can put lamb through easily because they're small, all the rest of it. Then we use CT lean as our gold standard. So that's, if you like, CT fat, CT muscle, CT bone. Rather than dissections or chemical grinding and all that sort of stuff, we've gone for CT. Of course, the industry standard is saleable, but saleable is highly variable. Fat, bone, how much you get. So we've done a whole lot of huge cut-ups, collaborated right across the Australian industry. All the processors, all the retailers rocked up. This is the cut I want in that spreadsheet. This is the cut I want on that spreadsheet. Something like each lamb carcass gets weighed 200 times by the time you keep breaking it down to the last bit of muscle. So then you can then use carcass weight, CT lean, to predict your muscle weights with huge precision. Where you going, Dave? So what, CT lean? What the hell are you going to do with CT? No CTs at an abattoir at the moment. Mind you, there might be soon. Those baggage scanners are pretty close to a CT. The ones that I've had the shit scanned out of me, I'm trying to get to this damn place. I friggin' hate that Bin Laden bastard. I know you all do, but I'm bloody glad you shot the shit out of him, because every time I go through an airport, I just think of him. All right, so we thought, well, we've got to go for a new era of measurement. This lean meat yield's important. So we were lucky. We had a pretty good company at home in New Zealand. Also, this is what we do at the moment. So we're not flash. We manually palpate the lamb carcass at a given point and guess the fat score. And luckily a woman does it in abattoirs. If a bloke did it, well shit, you'd have no answer. They wouldn't turn up. But it's still a crap answer. You can see those points there. That's predicted versus actual, carcass composition. It's a random number generator. That's what we do at the moment. So we're pretty embarrassing. So what happened in Australia was there was a movement to have some more automation. The cost of labour is huge at home, and one of those automation aspects was sawing up lamb, particularly sawing the carcass. And the first cut of a lamb, or some of the cuts of a lamb, are very valuable, and that cut between the fourth and fifth rib is a hugely valuable cut, because the meat going down on the shoulder is worth less than the meat going up. And so you optimise that cut over 1 million lambs a year, you make money. You'll pay for that X-ray machine in a year. If you've got a big enough turnover, about 1 million lambs is the number, I think. So that came in, and these automatic cutting machines were driven by just a standard X-ray machine, because they could find the ribs. Now that doesn't measure carcass composition. So then a colleague of mine, Graham Gardner, who works with me, a brilliant young scientist, he saw the opportunity to turn those machines into something called a DEXA, a dual energy X-ray machine. They're medical, they're like a medical machine. We can all go and get a DEXA. A lot of ladies, when they get older, need a DEXA to check out how their hips are going, you know, with osteoporosis. A bloke like me's getting too friggin' fat, I'll get DEXA to say, no, you bastard, lose weight. Well, I knew anyway, but... You'll see the precision that this DEXA gives for lean meat yield determination. It's got an R-squared of about 0.92. You can't do that in the lab. That's hugely precise. That's at 12 a minute. This thing could operate at 30 a minute if you wanted it to. So anyway, we reckon we've probably cracked, and if you want, I've got a video you can welcome to look at lunchtime, whenever, at dinner time, of this DEXA in operation. So we reckon we maybe have cracked the first step of the equation, accurate measurement of lean meat yield and proper information being fed, one, back to farmers, and two, fed forward to retail and markets. So the next one, of course, is the quality side of it. What I'm going to do about that. So the world literature, so the key point being that lean meat yield to its extreme is antagonistic with eating quality. Now, the world literature has this in it. It's basic friggin' logic. If you lose all the fat, what's left? It's a bit of dry old protein, and I'd call it protein then, because I actually hate the word protein. Apologies to the people who spoke before us. But I eat lamb and I eat beef. I don't eat friggin' protein. I mean, you know, if I'm crazy, I'll eat tofu, but I still wouldn't call it protein. I mean, I hate the damn stuff, but, you know, those tofu eaters, good luck to them. And our own data tells us. So we look at the genetic trends in Australia, and I'll come back to how we did this. But the genetic trend in yellow is the lean meat yield. So we've whacked more muscle onto our lambs. We've done a hell of a good job, and so we needed to. I have no hesitation about that. But look at our intramuscular fat in grey. It's come down. Look at our predicted consumer score. That's the score the consumer gets. It's coming down. So this is in terminal size, by the way, because our system is based on typically terminal size being crossed over a mother. The mother might be a merino or another composite maternal. So the father is the one that gives the muscularity and the grunt to the lamb, if you like. So that was a bit of a concern. So the industry said, well, let's work on this harder. So what are we going to do? So what we've done is, for 10 years now, we've had a big genetic resource or reference flock. And there's 2 still in existence. They've been going for 10 years. They've just been approved for another 5. 2,000 lambs get killed every year from about 140 sires. The same sires get crossed over both farms, by AI, of course. We measure lean meat yield, intramuscular fat, iron, zinc, fatty acids, pH, colour, you know, a heap of stuff at the abattoir. Of course, a lot of the other production parameters are measured as well. Worm resistance, fly strike, mothering, you know, da-da-da-da-da. So it's a huge progeny testing type system. We're in the process of completing the sensory testing of 5,600 lambs, 10 consumers testing for each cut of lamb. And then the idea, of course, is to bring genomics into this. So this is really a genomics training reference block. That's what it boils down to feed into our genetic system. I'll come back to it later. They run extensively, pasture-fed. Obviously, they need some supplements during our long, dry Mediterranean summers. But it's all outdoors, you know, whatever, never, ever, ever, or whatever your dam will call over here, that'd all apply. You know, squeaky clean, all the rest of it. We've eaten about 2,000 lambs so far that we've analysed. 200 sires, there's merinos, terminals, maternals, merinos and dorpers. The mothers were merinos or Border-Leicester merino crosses. The average carcass weight's about 51 pounds, but a big range, you know, 33 to 80. We ate short loin, or I think you'd call it the sirloin over here, and the top side. Each one of those cuts from each animal was eaten by 10 consumers. So 6,800 consumers are underpinning the data I'm about to give you to you. So it's a pretty strong bit of result. And we often actually have in our room when we talk about, you know, oh, we can't do that. You know, the president, the abattoirs, no, it's too bloody hard, Dave. We often put a chair on the table. And who's the chair represent? What does the consumer say? Is it too hard? Well, what does the consumer say? But what does the consumer say? Just keep coming back to it. It's a damn good idea to put a chair in the room for whoever you are. Aha. Ta-da. Now what do we do? Do I need a water as well? Righto. I might need sedatives. I don't know what I need. I've heard something's legal over here, but I haven't found the shop yet. I need it, maybe. Righto, so what we've done with the data, there's some key measurements that do have a significant relationship with the consumer score for both those cuts. And those key significant relationships were a negative relationship with lean meat yield to the consumer score, a positive relationship with intramuscular fat. Sire type had an effect, so the terminals on average are worse and merinos on average are best. It's sort of ironic, isn't it? It's sort of ironic. It's a bit like beef cattle. Like for like, what do you reckon eats better out of dairy versus beef? Friggin' dairy. How's that grab you? There's something about it, eh? That's true. No one tells you that. Righto. If you look at the lamb loins that were eaten, nearly 2,000 of them, about 7% were unsatisfactory, 34% were good every day, 35% were better than every day, 24% were premium. So that's the actual number of answers in those different categories. And so we're using sire type, intramuscular fat, lean meat yield and the cut as a statistical prediction of those distributions. So that's how we go. It's not perfect, it's pretty noisy and ratty, as you'd expect. These are consumers. These are punters off the street. But you can see there's a clear response curve. This is for the loin in this particular case. So then we overlay our thresholds for, if you like, fail, pass, credit distinction, and you get that. And so let's say my top lamb brand, I want to have everything to be 4-star and above. So about 60% of the product will be there, is one way to view it. Or you might say, I just want to remove all the 2 stars, get them out of it. So in other words, you can slice and dice this data commercially however you like. I'm not one who tells you how to do that. That's your job. But what I'm trying to say is we can start to get some logical differentiation. So to give you some rough idea, in the carcass weight range from 45 to 60 pounds, which is sort of a pretty much sweet spot for Aussie lamb, if you want to just underpin it at 3-star, just a bare pass only, 3% IMF, you're in strife. You've got to be above 3% intramuscular fat. So New Zealand, watch out. If you want to be 4 or 5-star in that same carcass weight range, well, there's no one magical value because you've got lean meat yield being negative, IMF being positive. But roughly speaking, the lean meat yield somewhere between 55 and 57 and intramuscular fat greater than or equal to about 5%. So quite achievable, not incredibly fatty product by any means. The old heart tick at home was less than 10%. So I'm not talking about producing Japanese black or Wagyu cattle. Far from it. Of course, if you're 7% IMF, you can have any lean meat yield you like. But that's quite high. That's up at the topper end of our ranges. We get up to about 10% fat. Right, let's move on to intramuscular fat. Hello, I've lost my time, so hopefully it'll go all right. So intramuscular fat is important for juiciness, flavour and tenderness. Our average value is about 4.3%, so we're okay. There's no need to panic. But I'd like it to be, the average value to be, say, 6. That'd be me, but whatever, it's fine. Heritability is about 0.5 or 50%. That's huge, by the way. That's a huge heritability for a meat science trait. It's the highest I've seen in some time. So it's highly heritable. There's the response curve of the consumer score to IMF. It's published in Meat Science. So quite a clear response. Overall liking, flavour and juiciness are the biggest responders, but even tenderness responds as well, which is well known in Meat Science. I mean, it shows up for US and Chinese consumers as well with our own data. So, you guys are no different, I'm sure, but you're the masters of marbling in beef. You're into it, grading it for friggin' years. I mean, even Chinese hot pot. So Chinese hot pot is a bit of old forequarter, sliced at 1.6 mil and boiled. Got the response. So that really did convince me. So our next step is, we'd like to grade intramuscular fat as well as lean meat yield in the abattoir. Well, do you reckon that's easy? Hell no. So 10 per minute, 12 per minute, you've got a high chain speed, number one. Number two, there's no ribbing in lamb until you get to the boning room when it's too late. And of course, the abattoirs want a hot measure. Oh, I couldn't possibly do it cold. Well, mate, you might have to rethink the business, but we don't know. Anyway, so we're having a crack at a whole lot of technologies, which I won't dwell upon. We'd love to collaborate in all of these areas, by the way. I agree with that concept of collaboration, given lamb's such a tight commodity around the world. So we've got cameras that we know can grade intramuscular fat in lamb at the eye muscle. No problem, it'll work, but it's difficult to implement that in an abattoir. We're looking at NIR, near infrared spectroscopy. So that's not a tuner being sexually assaulted, that's actually an NIR machine measuring the fat of tuna in Japan because it's worth more money if it's got more fat. Yeah, that's what it is. Just double check that. So they're with us, and we're working with that works in lamb. We're looking at a penetrating fibre optic probe. Perhaps the most promising one at the moment is nuclear magnetic resonance, which is in its very early infancy, but that looks possible. So unfortunately, CT itself is not good enough to accurately measure intramuscular fat in lamb, which is a pity. Righto. Let's move over to genetics for my last concluding slides. So of course, we use Australian sheep breeding values just like they're breeding values like are delivered anywhere else. We've got breeding values for a whole string of things. But of course, I'm going to focus on lean meat yield breeding value, intramuscular fat breeding value, some indexes which balance both of them, and our progression towards a breeding value for a consumer score. Whoops. So the first thing is, all those traits are not easy to measure. You can't see them. So they're underpinned by genomic selection. That's the first point. So the sheep CRC initiated genomic selection. It's now being commercialised through Neogen Australia. So, and then the data comes from Neogen back to sheep genetics who crunch it. So Neogen aren't controlling the genetics, they're just controlling the actual genomic testing, if you understand. So there's no conflict of interest there, we believe. That's the first point. And of course, to underpin the genomic selection, you need the reference flock. Genomic testing is still not perfect. It needs to be retrained year on year. That's why that resource flock is still going. Now, I'm sorry, this is a horrendous looking thing, but it's basically breeding values as a whole string of across the top for terminal size. The two I've circled is one for intramuscular fat and one for shear force. So we've got two commercial breeding values where you can select, if you like, based on eating quality. An intramuscular fat one and a shear force one. Shear force is, you might just call it sliced tenderness or something in the States, I'm not sure. But it's a mechanical determination of tenderness. Now, the interesting thing about those breeding values are nearly all negative. Scared the shit out of me when I first saw them, because what's happened is the geneticists love to backdate things to a uniform time. So they've backdated by genetic association all those intramuscular fats to the year 2000. So all the current ones are negative. So all the producers were cutting their throats, or threatening to. But of course they said, hang on mate, as long as you're in the top 50th percentile, you're going forward. So, but it's just interesting, they are negative, which really reinforces the message of what's happened over the years. Whoop, I've just turned that whole thing completely off, that's really good. Anyway, so we keep going, right? Well, it's on again. They're so powerful has been this message. See that red line there? That's our thing called Carcass Plus. So Carcass Plus has been around for, I don't know how long, 20 years. People love it. It's really simple, based on fat, muscle, and growth. Well, they've crossed it out. They've got rid of it. They're so petrified that Carcass Plus will lead to the deterioration of eating quality. So they got rid of it. It's gone. I couldn't believe it. I nearly retired there and then. The message has got through. Go baby. Anyway, the last blue one was actually an eating quality index. And there's two eating quality indexes that have been developed. One is to maintain eating quality, and the other one is to improve eating quality. So there's two indexes, we don't need to go into them in detail, but the key thing is they're still positive. So I'm sorry, I'm pointing to the left-hand screen. Apologies for that, or your right hand. They're still, but they're still giving you improvements in growth and muscling, but at a slower rate. It's not as if you've thrown them out. Now that, whoop, The other thing about this, it's caused change. Whoops. You just see back here. See, eye muscle area is still positive in both those. So there's still a positive emphasis on eye muscle area, etc. So they're sensible indexes that you don't have to use them, but they really prove that you can select for both if you measure both. That's the bottom line. Here's an example of meat elite. The meat elites are a group of Pole Dorsets and White Suffolks, and they've always been famous for being at the top end of genetic progress. And they were at the top end of genetic progress for muscling and growth and lean meat yield. And you can see that those lines going down, they were driving intramuscular fat down. But you can see the group as a whole have moderated. So that grey line in the middle is the average, so they've started to taper it off. One of the flocks, the top blue line, was deeply connected to the resource flock and chose to hammer lean meat yield, to hammer intramuscular fat. And you can see they've made gains in 3 or 4 years. So again, if you measure it, you can fix it. So I'm really, really happy we've got those things in place. I think we're on the home run before I step on this thing. So we are on the home run. So the take-home message, don't get me wrong, lean meat yield is very important. We don't want to see carcasses like we saw in Stan's picture. 50% fat is just freaking crazy. And the problem with lamb fat, of course, it's worth bugger all. The Chinese market maybe give you you get $5 a kilo in the Chinese market when you pull the cap off the rack. There's a little bit of meat in there and stuff, but a butcher gets nothing for it. Like beef fat is the price of a sausage. Beef's got it lucky, you know. They push the fat around a bit. We can't. Eating quality is clearly important, and both are needed to predict eating quality, and both are important for carcass value. Genetics for eating quality is here. You could do it tomorrow, especially consider that intramuscular fat is just so heritable. Carcass grading, we hope, is rapidly approaching. We really need this intramuscular fat measure at line speed. So as soon as we have that MSA model can be clicked in and we can predict this consumer score at the abattoir real time, and then genetics and nutrition can play out to help us deliver that. Of course, our current Meat Standards Australia principles will still apply. Electrical stimulation is absolutely necessary, particularly for domestic product, meat aging, best practice handling, no entire males, all the things we do normally anyway, of course, are still in place. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's our vision, our dream to determine this carcass value. And I really thank you. Hopefully it's been useful, and appreciate the opportunity. And I really thank our huge team. I'd like to particularly thank Meat and Livestock Australia for putting up for me for 30 odd years. The Sheep CRC, which has been hugely influential to underpin a collaborative approach across Australia. So Australia's a big country with nobody in it. So we've got a couple of people in Perth, a couple of people in Melbourne, a couple of people in Sydney. So we have to get together. So the government has set things up like these collaborative research centres to do that. And we probably should do it worldwide. It's a great friggin' model. Another one is we've got a big carcass grading program in a similar vein, which has just been started underpinning those technologies. So, and then thanks to the American Land Board again, very much.